Rumors confirmed after explorers find this at the bottom of Lake Ontario. We've all seen shows or heard stories where someone gets rid of something by throwing it into a lake or a similar body of water. According to myths and legends, there is all manner of items such as cities, treasures, objects, and even aliens hidden under the water. We've explored our entire planet, right? Wrong. Most of our planet is covered in water, 65% of which has not been explored. We know more about outer space than what lies underwater. However, being the curious beings that we are, many people have tried to either prove or disprove legends about things beneath the water's surface. In August 2017, a research team was getting ready for an expedition to Lake Ontario in Canada. According to legends, beneath Lake Ontario is a special piece of Canadian history. If the team manages to succeed, it would be an amazing achievement. This was called Mission Raise the Arrow. The team, working for OEX Recovery Group Incorporated. The company specializes in salvaging items in distress. The work alongside Canadian financial and mining outfits to recover lost objects from the bottom of Lake Ontario. It wasn't long before rumors of such a valuable object lying at the bottom of the lake reached the company, which immediately sprang into action. Some objects spoken of in legends are so important, valuable, or unique that once identified need to be found as quickly as possible. Raise the Arrow was a project created with one single purpose: to make this happen. According to OEX, the discovery would stun the world, and they immediately began to fund the project. While in theory, the project was simple enough. Search likely locations in the lake to find objects. However, even so, it was a long shot. The objects might be too well hidden, or they might not be able to raise the objects to the surface. Of course, there was also the chance that there was nothing there to begin with. A project like this would cost a fortune to fund, and the pressure on the team would be huge. Would it pay off? The water around the boat was clear, calm, and above all, silent. Nothing stirred the water at all. It was almost like the water itself was waiting in anticipation of the team's exploration. The team was imagining what they might find. Due to the value of what they were searching for, the company couldn't risk letting anyone know what they were looking for. On the off chance that it was a little more than a myth, they didn't want to get hopes up. Even the team didn't know exactly what they were searching for. This only excited the team further. In 1950, there were numerous reports by locals that claimed they had seen something in the lake which vanished as soon as they saw it. More than 60 years had passed since the strange sight was seen. However, what was it that they saw? The sightings have been brief, and no one had much time to process what they thought they saw. However, there was a long-lasting impact made on the witnesses. For decades, the story would be remembered and mulled over. Finally, there was a chance for answers. The team of Raise the Arrow was hoping to answer the question once and for all. The locals eagerly shared the stories with the team. The one thing, however, they couldn't answer was what it might be. The various witnesses happily pointed out where it happened. After leading them to the edge of the lake, a large area was pointed out offshore where the incident was supposed to have happened. This gave the team a starting point at least. With all their gear ready, the team started to prepare for the adventure. The area pointed out was called Point Petrie, located on the northeastern shores of Lake Ontario. This little peninsula is in Ontario's Prince Edward County. There are no nearby urban areas, as it is a protected wildlife conservation area. The pebble beaches in the area are popular among tourists, as are the rock cliffs and limestone formations. Like any other lake, legends accumulate around such areas. These contain all kinds of monsters and characters. A famous example is Loch Ness in Scotland, where the famous Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, is rumored to live. Many scientists have labeled Nessie as a hoax, but the high number of sightings make people wonder if it might be true. Lake Ontario has been the center of many rumors. In 2013, it was rumored that an alien species had created a base under the water of the lake. Many people found the idea of aliens at the bottom of the lake exciting, despite the fact that it is unlikely. Lake Ontario is one of the 5 Great Lakes of North America, With shores in both Canada and the U.S., its name means Lake of Shining Waters in the Huron language. It's the smallest of the Great Lakes, although still the 13th largest lake in the world. At the end of the Great Lake chain, Lake Ontario is the lowest at 243 feet, or about 74 meters above sea level. The lake was carved out by the Wisconsin ice sheet during the last ice age. At one point, the lake was actually a bay on the Atlantic Ocean. You can see dry beaches and banks up to 25 miles, or about 40 kilometers from the current shores, tracing the changes to the lake over the millennia. With the weight of the glaciers gone, the plates floating on the lava inside the globe are still bouncing back upwards. As the land rises out of the water, it tips a little, and inhabitants of the southern shores lose a bit of their land to the hungry ripples. 634 miles, about 1,020 kilometers of shoreline surrounded the waters of the lake. A further 78 miles, or 126 kilometers, outline its many islands. At its deepest, it's 133 fathoms to the bottom. Due to its depth, it never completely freezes in winter. The lake is fed by 10 rivers, including the Niagara River, waters tumbling down from the famous waterfalls to the southeast. Those waters leave by the St. Lawrence River, stretching northeast on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. Cities border the shores of Lake Ontario, most notably Toronto on the Canadian side and Rochester on the U.S. side. But much of the lake is home to large wetlands, which support a varied ensemble of plant and animal species. Pollution and deforestation have depleted many of the species native to the area. Nowadays, the wetlands and forests surrounding the lake are protected areas. Lake Ontario's shores are thousands of years old. They contain nearly 400 cubic miles of dark, secretive water. They stretch across the borders of two great nations. The task before the team was of biblical proportions, but they had help. Meet the Thunderfish. This cute little craft is an automatic underwater vehicle, a mini submarine. It's pretty much a drone that swims instead of flies. Its camera is a sonar device that can take high-resolution images of the environment surrounding it. No one is living in this yellow submarine, though. The team remained on dry land while piloting it around the designated area of the lake bed. And the Thunderfish delivered. It sent wonderful images back to its gloating masters. What did it see? All stories were put to the side now. There would be no made-up monsters, no alien invasions. They didn't know what they were looking for, but there could be no doubt that the sonar images in front of them showed something. What was it appearing on the screens before them? What could the nifty little probe be looking at, fathoms below them? The team craned forward over the images, trying to make some sense from them. As if they were squinting just right at a 3D picture, suddenly the shapes fell into place for the team. It was an aircraft, but it wasn't just any old aircraft. This one was special. How special? I hear you ask. Well, let's do a bit of time traveling and see if we can spot the aircraft new and shiny and not yet wet. Let's peer into the windows of a hangar somewhere in Canada owned by the government in 1946. The Second World War had just ended, but tensions between the Eastern and Western blocs were high. Each side was looking for an edge over the other. The Canadian government was pinning its hopes on a new jet fighter with serious destructive capabilities. The Cold War was beginning. Both sides were eager to gain military advantage over the other in the event of a large-scale battle. The war ended in 1991 without such an encounter ever happening, thus earning the title the Cold War. For over 40 years, the threat of invasion hung over the world. On one side, the Western Bloc, generally democratic, headed by the U.S. On the other side, the Eastern Bloc, communist, headed by the USSR. The emerging Third World countries tried desperately to stay neutral. Both East and West possessed the power to annihilate vast areas of land with one atomic bomb. No one really wanted this to happen, and it was the threat from both sides that kept the other from attacking. Nevertheless, the only way to feel safe is to have superior firepower. The Soviets started building aircraft that could carry their weapons over the Arctic to the U.S. and Canada. Canada saw the Soviet activity and raised it one capital company, Avro Canada Limited, now known as Avro Canada. These were the engineers assigned to creating the aircraft that could beat back the Russian threat, and they delivered. In 1953, the Avro CF-100 Canuck was born. It was christened the Clunk, and it remained on active service in the Canadian military until the 1980s. In 1952, as they were developing Old Clunk, the Royal Canadian Air Force received new intelligence. The Russians were upping the stakes once more. They were developing another aircraft. It was rumored to be a high-tech, high-speed, high-destruction animal that could wipe out the Canadian nation. But it would take the Soviets 7 years to perfect. Canada had time. She put it to good use. In 1953, the Clunk set out on her launch flight. Whilst people of note were saluting her, shadowy heads were already down, studying blueprints for her successor. The RCAF had already formulated a report in 1952, detailing how they could improve the Canuck. It was called RCAF's Final Report of the All-Weather Interceptor Requirements Team. All-Weather Interceptor didn't exactly roll off the tongue, though, so Avro Canada called it the Avro Arrow. She was everything that the name invoked. The Avro Canada CF-105 Arrow was a supersonic interceptor. With its delta wings, it looked like a spearhead, as it flew as one, true and deadly. The main specific improvements were its strength and speed. This baby could reach heights above 50,000 feet, or about 15 kilometers. She could fly at Mach 2 speeds. Mach 2 sounds pretty impressive, and when you think that it's equal to 1,500 miles per hour, about 2,414 kilometers an hour, you can see why. Now, back in the day, there was no computer simulation models to test theories with. No, engineers in those days had to make model prototypes. Before testing with these prototypes, it was impossible to know whether the theories would hold together in the air. Between 1953 and 1957, 9 prototypes of the Avro Arrow were constructed. They were perfect imitations of the hoped-for real thing, except that they were made to a smaller scale. The Arrow was named for its distinctive delta wing design. Today, of course, we have seen delta wings on many aircraft, large and small, but back then, it was an innovative new concept, and it did a special job. The barrier that aircraft engineers had long struggled to overcome was that of sound. The secret turned out to be in the wing shape. Delta wings create wave drag, which creates an awful lot of complicated vortexes and forces that enable the plane to fly faster than the speed of sound. The 9 Avro Arrow prototypes were each around 10 feet, or 3 meters long. Their wingspan was about 6.5 feet, or 2 meters, and they weren't quite carbon copies of their big sister, though. These mini arrows ran on solid fuel. They were mounted on rocket boosters in order to reach the speed needed to test the wings for drag and stability issues. Then they were launched from Point Petre, Lake Ontario. These cute little aircraft turned out to really pack a punch. They reached Mach 1.7 before the glassy waters of Lake claimed their prize. The engineers had the information that they needed to move the design to the next stage. Surprisingly, little needed to be tweaked based on the prototype's flight data. The wings were drooped and given a camber. A dog tooth was introduced. The newly published area rule principle was applied, leading to changes such as a sharper nose and the addition of a tail cone. The Avro Canada CF-105 Arrow was rolled out in October 1957. The plane bore the mark RL-201. It was to be a grand occasion, marking a turnaround in Canadian defenses. 13,000 guests were invited to the prestigious occasion, but the Soviet Union, not to be outdone, defeated the Arrow before it even got off the ground. They launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial Earth satellite. This was far more exciting than a mere plane.